Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome back. This is the fourth episode, if I'm correct, on the SASCA podcast. Is it fourth or fifth? Fourth one? Fifth one already?
I
So
think it's the
fifth one,
fifth.
fifth one already,
Yeah.
yes. So things are going quite fast. The last topic we covered, we spoke a bit on profiling and testing and the importance of that, as well as recovery and so on. So today, Peter's going to take it a bit further in terms of on-field work and on-field testing, and part of that will definitely make up the profile that you do for your athlete. So welcome. Thank you very much, Peter. Welcome.
Thanks, Naat. Thanks for the invite. Yes, I just want to give thanks to Naat, yeah, the podcast and the stuff that you're putting together on all the platforms on Spotify and YouTube, and it's really good. So thanks for that, Naat. I really appreciate it. And yeah, especially you guys must come with those comments and your opinions and how we can make it better. Um, I think the bottom line is we want to make it something that it's tangible that you can actually take and use out on where you coach. And again, we definitely, I just realized in the last short 3, 4 years that we actually know very little. Um, I think I know, and then I met clever guys who know a lot more than I do. They might not always have the practical experience, but they are definitely more knowledgeable of certain stuff than I am. And so if you've got ideas or better ways or basic ways that we can improve it, please give us a comment, give us a link, give us some info, and maybe one day maybe come and join us on our podcast.
You're right, 100%. Thank you very much. All right, Peter, so
So
the floor is
I
yours.
just want to allude on what we spoke last week quickly. So we spoke about profiling and profiling athletes. So specifically today, that's my forte and my passion is how do we actually measure? How do we measure someone's speed? And how do we profile that on the field? And there's many ways, and I'm not really here to sell any technology, but fundamentally you want to use good equipment. First, I think a whistle and a stopwatch is not great. You can if that's all you got, but there's better ways. I think cell phones are have been great in ways and new methods that you can do things. But I do think there's good value in getting some good speed lights. The bow systems are good. Smart speeds are brilliant. Um, but something that is obviously validated and it tests what you're supposed to do, but it's also reliable. I don't know if you want to give your comments on about that quickly now.
Yeah, no, 100%. So if you have the budget, the speed gates is really good. And you get some that's quite budget friendly at the moment as well. Technology is getting easier accessible and cheaper. I think there's an app that you get on the iOS platform called My Sprint, which is similar to the My Jump and My Lift and all those. So I've used the My Sprint a few years back. I haven't used it recently, but a few years back I used the My Sprint, and a brilliant app. Uh, Probably not ideal if you have large groups of athletes to test, but if you have a few individual athletes that you want to test and you want to do that, or you have more than one iOS device, it's quite a
Yeah,
nice app, very good app to use if you
yeah,
want to get a bit more electronic timing on your athletes.
yeah. Tell me not in that app. So I've never used it. Is a video clip that you take?
So it's a video clip that you take. You have to have, it's like I haven't used this in a long time, but if I remember correctly, you put out 6 or 7 markers every 5 meters. So ideally just agility poles that you put up right there.
Yes.
And then you have to have the camera on a tripod at a certain distance and at a certain angle. And then you start the video recording as when the athlete runs. You start the video recording. Athlete starts to run, and if I remember correctly, you follow the athlete on the tripod as they go through and end on that. And then there's a process similar to the My Jump app that you frame by frame on each marker you mark that athlete's hip is on that frame on the marker, and then it gives you
That's excellent.
yeah, it gives you
So
a
I'll show you
velocity
now
profile
frame for
as well.
frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, say again, not?
Yeah, so it gives you a velocity profile. It's also validated similar as the My Jump. I think it's the same creator also that made the My Jump app that also did the My
Oh,
Sprint
okay.
app, if I remember correctly. So it looks like
I'm
same
actually on my
platform. Yeah.
iOS device now. I'm going to Google it now. I'll never use it,
Yeah.
but fundamentally, what we're going to show you today is exactly in that context. Is you actually want to be able, especially with speed work, you want to be able to do it frame by frame. And I'll show you a little bit why, because off the field and on the field, the assistance of improving or changing or developing that profile, it's necessary to do it frame by frame because each element of the frame has a different point that you always want to improve. I'm going to share with you today a concept that I actually stole many years ago from DeFranco, and you will know DeFranco, not.
Yes, yes.
I don't know what your opinion is, but I'm quite a good. So he's got some amazing stuff. And years ago, and I still use it in professional setup. He started a concept called Run Great. I don't know if you heard of Run Great before.
I have heard of it before. Just heard of it. Not looked in depth into it, but I've heard of
Okay, okay. So I took the Run Great app and just applied and currently when I do evaluation specifically for speed development, I follow that Run Great principle and I'll take you through it quickly today just to give you some of the fundamental principles. It is a lot of work, it is a lot of context. So that if you say my sprint app, not is that the thing's name? My sprint or my speed?
my
Um,
Sprint app. Yeah.
my Sprint app. It'll work perfectly for what we want to do, and it's obviously cheap enough for you to be able to handle. But if you do speed lights, I will always do it in conjunction with a video in any way. The reason being, there's some elements of speed that is unfortunately too quick. So it's not something you can pick up with your eye, especially if you look at ground contact time. It's quicker than an eye blink, some of the movement patterns. So you want to be able to stop it frame by frame, look at specific details, and now allude a little bit more when we go through the concept. So nothing that I've done, just to start off by saying, nothing that I've learned or done is done by myself. I've just done a few courses in the last few years, last 24 years. So it's quite a long time. And I use a lot of concepts on the different people and just amalgamate together to get a product. No, nothing is my own. I'm still learning, and hopefully we'll learn a bit more. So now I'm going to share with you my screen, and
Perfect.
then we can maybe jump into it. Still, yeah, I think you need to help me
Yeah.
there. That's not.
So while we're busy sharing the screen there, so I've got a saying: almost nothing is your own. Even if you think it's your own, someone else, there's a good chance someone else might have also thought about it. So
100%.
yeah,
100%. So please don't say this is a copyright. It's not.
yeah,
I'm not copying anything. It's everything's copied.
yeah.
I
So,
learned it from someone somewhere a while ago.
yeah, so you should be able to
So
share
it's not
now.
my own, and we can share it with anyone.
Yeah, you should be able to share now. Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Let's see. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, perfect.
So let's jump into this one first. So I'm gonna just share you guys. Can you see that
There we
screen?
go.
Okay,
On the
Laka.
screen, there we go.
So whoops, we go there. So fundamentally, just the run grade principle. The run grade is an acronym that we use or that I use to evaluate a profile, an athlete, and certain concepts of every element of speed development, and we'll allude to a little bit more. Um, so in every facet in a straight line and multi-directional, I use run grade as a formula or an acronym to go through each concept and component of that profile. Just to say that the methods are there, and there's multitudes, and currently there's so many methods. But I think the biggest thing is principles. I want to discuss some principles and stuff that you need to go through and maybe understand. And if you don't, it's fine. And if you disagree, please let us know. Um, but I want to say that the quickest way to get someone fast actually is get them lighter. So that's not a great word you want to tell a rugby player, but
No, no,
that is
definitely not.
honest truth. So make them lighter and get them stronger, and they'll be faster. So we have to always go back to our matrix that we spoke about in the beginning, not about obviously intent, nutrition, recovery, and movement. And again, like I said, this is all stolen from Exos. But fundamentally, if we start looking at screening or looking at how we profile our athletes, I want a basic fundamental one for anyone out there is to use FMS. I don't know if you still use FMS or not.
Um, yeah, I've used it up to a point. At the moment, our physiotherapist with where the rugby has got a functional movement screen, not the FMS specific, but a functional movement screen that we've
100%.
put
Something
together. Yeah,
similar. And I think it's out there. There's a course you can do. It's great. It
mm,
gives you great way to evaluate and profile and screen a lot of players quickly. And then you can divide red and black, or what do you want to call them, or green. And there are some athletes that first need to do some mechanical, some representative or rehabilitation or preventative exercises to before you do a lot of things that we do, and can evaluate them effectively. But it's just as a reference. And then I don't know heard of the FCS screening, kindly not.
No, I haven't. No.
So fundamental capacity, same guy Cook started many years ago as a Salasanam. If you want to move it, look at athletes and their movement literacy. So how well do they move fundamentally? Is this fundamental capacity. And what it just entails is to say that these athletes that you work with, if I want to screen them a profile, I need to know, are they moving literacy? Can they move well? Because of that fundamental is where it is, then we can look at sport specific skills. So I'm going to allude a little bit more to sport specific or running specific. But just to say, you need to screen your athletes to find out, can they jump? Can they produce force? And can they do it multiple times? If they can't do any of those effectively, whatever I'm going to say now, just you can go back to the basics and start there. Start
Yep.
with fundamental movements, get them moving effectively, moving well. And for the players, you might give players in your system not, and you might allude to rugby players are not always the greatest movers. They were the
No,
biggest,
not always. No.
strongest, fattest guy on the field. And if you ever in our facility, you'll see I fundamentally go back to these first. I screen your basic screen, your fundamental screen, and if there's limitations in that movement, I'll first go there before I do specifics. Just a bit of a picture of screening. Um, so if you haven't done it, so there's about 7 of FMS screening patterns, and it gives you basic movements of literacy. And then one I want to allude in a little bit more today is this fundamental capacity screen. It fundamentally gives you a good overview of how is their movement control. Because if you want to run effectively, you need to move efficiently. And a lot of your players in your system might not be the fastest athlete, but you can change efficiency and in the long term can help with energy efficiency. Um, and in a match like a rugby game or a tennis match or whatever sport you do, it's not just that one element, but it's the multitude of many elements that you save energy that might mean that you win a game. If you
No,
look at
very
the
true.
Springboks the last few days, I think they always think they were better, but they definitely have done it more times and were convinced that they could do it. Fundamentally, if you want to be fast in any element, is you need to have postural control, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Thirdly, you need to be or have the moment or the what's around English word, the capability to have power, to generate power, and that's the quickest force you can apply in the shortest amount of time. And if you don't have that ability, you need to develop it before you can run really well. And then last back is impact control. Is how well do you store energy over multiple repetitions? Because in running, actually, that's or in stepping or cutting or moving or tennis, or that's actually what our main goal is that energy storing over amount of time, and that actually helps you with your efficiency. I don't know if you want to allude or share something on that.
No, no. Listen, that all makes a lot of sense, and I think anyone who's familiar with the functional movement screen will know, or at least have an idea of that. For those of you who are not familiar with the functional movement screen, well worth your time to have a look into that. And if you want to invest in a nice book to have on your shelf that you can refer back to and use quite often, that's definitely great. One of Greg Cook's books, functional movement screening books.
Books,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that you can have a look and try and
And
do.
this fundamental capacity screen is a nice thing to see if your athletes are literate in movement. And again, and if they don't have postural control or they can't carry things, they can't have generate power, and they can't or they're not efficient over time. Um, I would again go back there first before I try to make them fast
Yeah.
or strong. Okay. So when we look at testing, and this is maybe we can allude in a little bit later, is there's a few fundamental tests that I will do. It's not great. It's not you. There's a lot more you can do. And with technology, you can do obviously a bit more. Um, But the basic is, again, is body composition. You can't hide from that. Again, like I said, the lighter athlete is better, but you can lose body fat percentage and make them lighter. Doesn't always need to be lean or something. But the lighter athlete normally just moves better because their relative weight makes it. Then broad jump is a very fundamental thing, especially for starting, and I'll show you a little bit later where it fits in. The vertical jump, and there's obviously for the guys there's a lot of variety and stuff you can do, but those fundamental power movements will give you a good indication of how effective this athlete is in certain elements of the game, or sorry, elements of speed. I do a very basic 10 meter. I actually do a 5 meter as well in those increments Naat spoke about earlier. A 10 meter gives you a great idea about the starting capabilities and the acceleration. 40 is the general. Some guys use 30, some use 50. For our sport, rugby, we mainly only use 40. And again, just to say, we don't start off kicking off doing 40s on day one. We have a progressive build up until they can run at top end speed and sustaining of top end speed before
So
we jump into
so
40s. It's
just
normally
maybe,
like 4 to 5 weeks.
sorry, Peter. So just maybe explain
Sorry,
that.
not.
Just maybe explain that. 'Cause a lot of people won't understand that, especially guys who haven't worked in rugby specifically, and probably most of your team sports.
Yeah.
Because you might have guys who work with individuals here, or maybe students who haven't done this. You mentioned that the 40 meter, that you won't start off immediately getting into the 40 meter. What and why? I mean, just give us a bit of your
Yeah.
understanding there.
Yeah, there's lots of theories now. So obviously, guys would say, "Yeah, it's hammies and it's whatever. They're scared to injure hammies." But fundamentally, you can imagine that running at top end speed, running the fastest you possibly can, you're fundamentally carrying around about 2.5 times. We've done measurements for some of our top athletes to 2.75 times their body weight on one leg. That's the forces applied on the floor. And that's done literally quicker than an eye blink. So if the body's not used to that intensity or that load, um, especially in week 1 or 2 or 3, where they haven't done top load or top end mechanics or top end running speed, we are just wary of injuries. And it's normally comes with you just started, it's normally overuse of the same muscle over a long period of time. The stabilizer hasn't really kicked in yet. We haven't really hit our marks in the gym to get them to full strength. And all of that collectively, especially in the beginning of the season when it's new and recovery is not optimal because essentially fatigue. We've just had a few overuse injuries. If we do start too quickly with absolute speed mechanics or absolute speed work. So I'm not saying don't do mechanical work. I do from literally the first week, I do a lot of mechanical work. But the load and intensities at top end speeds, we've just found is too high for the athletes to handle. I don't know what your opinion is
Yeah,
now.
no, 100%. So, I mean, you can imagine if even yourself, if you have had a layoff of, say, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes, well, anything from 2 to 6 weeks, you've had a layoff. You haven't done anything. So you're in a
Yeah,
state of being detrained largely. Let's say, for example,
yeah,
also if you played rugby, you just come out of a bit of a battering season also. So your body's also been battered. After it's being battered, then you also have a off period where you're going to be detraining, and then in that detraining phase to all of a sudden just smash into those kind of loads, as you mentioned, there's
yeah,
probably not ideal. Um, so
yeah,
this obviously, yeah, vary from one group to the next, and you know your athletes, how fast you will be working them into getting to a 40-meter sprint, for example.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, but that's a
And the
good rule
training
of thumb.
experience has a huge
Yeah,
impact now.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's a good rule of
But
thumb to not immediately on day one start with with the top speed exercise.
no, hopefully not.
Yeah,
And also for our 505. So for a long while we did the combine, the 3 cone agility drill. We've just fundamentally same as a 40. Only after about 3 weeks or 4 weeks we'll do a 505 test, and fundamentally it's just to see how well can they turn on the left foot and right foot
yeah,
individually, and if there are limitations of how we can improve. But what
yeah,
you'll see, and I just want to allude to that, this is not an agility test.
exactly. Yeah,
This is very closed mechanical test for us to see our athlete's ability to generate speed or acceleration.
Yeah,
And what I don't allude here, and this is something that we mechanically train, but we don't test it. And the 505 is, besides the turning capabilities, it has a great um, method of also coaching or teaching deceleration.
yeah,
So it's not just the turning, it has a great capacity to teach them to slow down and turn. And in
true.
most sports, tennis and hockey and field sports, um, that deceleration and the ability to change direction is massive. And again, this is a very simple, very basic, very generic test that we do to see change of direction, but also to look at deceleration on a measurement. And again, like I said in the beginning, it's all done on time. And again, it's done on video so we can look at hopefully, or if there's any moving mechanics or break in the kinetic chain that we need to look at.
All right, awesome. That's very good. Yeah, it's very much what I'm
Happy.
doing. Yeah,
How is
very
it?
much
Is there
very much the
something else
battery.
that you add in the night?
Um, not that. It's basically this very much the same. I'll start off. I'll do a 30 meters test, but it's also because I want to start them sooner. I opted. I did a 10, 40 and a 10, 40 and a 60 at some point, but I cut the 60 because it's just too far, and I get enough acceleration on a 40 and on a 30. So I prefer the 30 because I just want to be able to get them into the 30-meter sprint faster than what it would take me to get them into a 40. And this, in
Yeah,
my experience with
yeah,
the level of rugby players that I'm working with, I have found I've got just dropping that 10 meters off, I had a much lower risk. So that's of getting issues and niggles. So the 40 versus the 30, that
100%.
the 10 meter just made a made quite a big difference in terms of the risk that I'm
Yeah,
working with in terms of that.
yeah.
But that's once again 40 is
So
me
we've
getting
done
outcome.
tests, we've done flyings at a stage. That so we do a flying
Yeah,
20. But because you previously alluded to, and I'll show you now the next pictures, because we fragmented our 40s, um, we have a
yeah,
start.
you
I'll
have
show
a
you a little bit now. Starts to excels to top end speed. And we fundamentally monitor because we've got the technology to see the flying capabilities in the last 40. We've just found, especially with the top athletes, they don't really achieve their top end mechanics or top end speed below 30.
okay.
So we still do 40s. It depends definitely on the athlete, depends
Mm,
on the age, it depends on the experience. But for us, this is what we do at junior level. The senior level is currently, to give an idea, they don't do any speed tests. They use the GPSs. I don't know how well effective that is, but they
sure.
use GPSs and they use that as a value to determine their maximal sprinting capabilities. So,
Nice.
so it is something that might be discussed in you and your coach of what your needs are and
Yeah,
the requirements are. Um, but for us, when I do speed work, these are the fundamental stuff that I want to be able. Again, I'm saying there's lots of methods,
yeah,
but the principle is I want to be able to see all of it.
no, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
And then just picture. So when we look at evaluation, just to say it depends on who you are and where you come from. Um, if you're a top sprinter, there's obviously different things you're going to look at. I'm going to talk about principles and philosophies. And again, a hand clap with shoes compared to a proper gun and electric measurements. And it depends on what your needs are. But you can still the old method and use and stand and 3 point starts. And when we test, we even do a 3 point start. But because we have a dead start position in rugby, we do test it. But it doesn't mean that it's everything on a straight line needs to stay the same. You can use different methods as long as the basic principles of your sport is implemented in it. My idea would be is to test it, evaluate it, put it down on paper, and even if it's just to create a baseline of where they are, at least you've got something you can work with for the future.
No, perfect.
Happy with that? Not
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, same on my side
things that
also.
we can maybe speak to. Say again.
So it's also the same reason. I've got the same reasoning why I also use the 3 point for my testing. Yeah. I know there's some other sports that say just let them start however they want. I think they saw a guy
Yeah,
in football, but I mean, it. I just Zach said I've got the same reasoning that you have. So
yeah. So for me, this is something I got again from Athletes Performance. Um, it's just a corrective model, just to explain to you what we're looking at. First and foremost is they need to have stability and they need to know positions. They need to be able to have mobility and stability in the structure and in the trunk and the arms and legs and the shoulders to be effective. Um, and again, you could do all of this on this paper, you can do without running. You could do it in the gym, you could do it with a sled, you can do it with a crawler, but there are some fundamental corrective stuff that needs to be implemented for you to be effective as a runner. I'm not saying you cannot run, I'm just saying to be effective
Mm.
and to improving, you need to look at mobility, stability, you need to look at coordination. If then an athlete is not coordinated, make an effort to get them coordinated. Do drills, do rhythms, do patterns, do I had a long discussion this week with a lady who does what we call mind movement. We can maybe chat about it's called primitive movements.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you need to go and look at primitive movements or reflective movement, that the word they use it is primitive or reflective acts and abilities. Even if you need to go back there and look at the stuff that's inhabilitating the athlete to move effectively, is go back, address it, and then get back to the basics. But coordination is vital. And then lastly is strength qualities. We're not talking about strength lifting a heavy weight always. That is massively important to be fast. And if you want to ask me, if you want to spend the least amount of time to get to the fastest, the pace you should start is in the gym. You need to get stronger. You can do whatever you want to do. If you're not strong, you won't get faster. But strength qualities mean there are certain elements in running that needs to be strong. If you look at an athlete on the field and they say, yes, that guy's fast, 99% of the time is not just because he runs quick in a straight line. There's a lot of other qualities that he needs, and included coordination and stability. But there's center of gravity, there's base of control, there's a low center of mass. There's other physiological elements that plays a massive role in performance. And maybe at a stage we can just have a chat about strength qualities. But those ones play a major role. Length, length, length plays a huge role. Where you carry most of your weight plays a huge role. How strong your trunk is compared to the rest of their body plays a huge role. Your arms, actually, your shoulder mechanics in running mechanics, and we'll get there now, plays a huge role. So it's not just getting stronger, it's getting stronger as a structure and applying that strength out on the field. I don't know if you want to allude on that note.
No, no, 100%. I mean, that's all the things that will help you transfer the qualities to your performance. That's the thing. So
100%.
I
100%.
mean, that's the key thing that you would, in a perfect world, we would want everything that we're doing transfers to performance, and that's what we want. So in the end is basically the
100%.
sports performance. That's what it's about. So yeah.
It is fundamentally it. And again, like I said, most of this corrective models you can do in the gym. You can do it on the field. It doesn't need to mean always running fast, but I can correct a lot of stuff in with positioning patterns and power in the gym. It could be a wall drill. It could be a sled, a crawler. It could be a chain. It could be a tire. It could be so many other things. But if these basic of mobility, stability, coordination, and strength is not there, you are going to struggle to get your athletes quicker. Um, and
No, for
then
sure.
just to quickly allude is when we look at profiling, and this is our conversation, Naat, and please
Yeah.
jump in here, but we normally break it down in the following starting patterns. I know we've seen this before now, but
Yes.
fundamentally we say, look, we look at athletes' starts. And in different sports, it's different positions. We fundamentally have in rugby, we standing start in a 3 point position or a base position. We do test the 3 point start position because it's a defensive pattern that we sometimes use. But we look at obviously starting strength and starts. So how well can you break inertia and how quickly can you do it? Then we look at obviously absolute or explosive strength. That's one of the components that we look at. Um, and it is a continuum of movement to get them not just strong with starting positions, but to get them explosive as quickly as we can. And then stiffness or reactive strength is a vital component of
Very true.
getting them fast. It's not just applying force, it's not just making it strength and explosive. It is actually not bending. It sounds weird, But
Yeah.
the fundamental is if you've got a stick or a nail, and I always start my sessions this way, if I want to nail something into the floor or into wood, if that thing is bendy, it means that the energy or the fundamental strength will dissipate. Athletes' person strength is exactly the same. We actually don't want you to be bendy. We want you to be stiff and rigid. And stiffness or reactive strength is a huge component. And again, coming back to my previous slide, all of this is stuff you can do in the gym. It's stuff that you need to develop as S&C in the gym facility. You can do it out on the field, but fundamentally, the basic principles of context needs to be somewhere where you can slow it down, you can break it down to the smallest element and improve those specific qualities of that. I don't know if you want to allude something on here now.
Yeah. So I think if we use that analogy that you're talking about, the stiffness and that, um, it's the same thing if you want to apply force or apply strength onto anything. So if you want to do an overhead press as an example, you can't have your hips and knees and ankles relaxed and you look like one of those, those it's kind of like that blow up dolls, not that kind of blow up dolls, but the ones you
Yeah,
get
yeah,
at
yeah.
the garage. They've got a compressor there and it blows and the all over the
100%.
place. So you kind of look like that while you're trying to do a shoulder press or a squat or a jump. So you have to kind of be rigid, be strong, be tight, so you can apply the force. The moment you are not stiff and rigid, the force will not be able. You'll not be able to apply that. So like similar, if you, most of you might have experienced this when you're standing on top of like something quite unstable, like a box or I don't know, something like a wall that's not stable, and you want to jump onto another wall that's in front of you. Now, you jump as if whatever you're standing on is rigid. But the moment you jump, that gives way, and then you're not going to make it to the other wall, so you basically fall, or whatever it is that you want to get to. So that's kind of like what you want to try and you're trying to apply force, but you're not going to get your outcome. You're not going to be able to apply, and the body automatically down regulates force application when that happens. So we want to make sure that we up-regulate force application so that there's no leakage of potential energy and efficiency in the movement. That's what it comes down to get the speed
100%.
there. So, well, yeah, great
100%.
said, yeah.
And then there is a continuum, obviously, from relative, because you obviously need to overcome inertia, from relative strength or relative force to maximal force. And so people say there is a certain point, and there's lots of coaches will tell you there is a point of no return. There is a point where too much strength is not going to make it better. I've been lucky to be in professional sports for the last, sure, 24, 25 years,
Mm.
and I have very seldom seen athletes get there. Um,
Yeah,
there's not a lot of athletes that I've worked with who's got to that point where there's no strength gains that can make them better. Um, there are a few, especially our lighter athletes, where a relative strength has a certain element to it. But especially in rugby, your bigger boys, they could really, compared to relative strength, they can all improve.
yeah.
Um,
So that's
Sorry, not.
also something that we spoke about earlier when you said about to also make the athlete lighter or the athlete's body weight. What a lot of people don't realize, well, players don't often realize this. So let's say a lot of them need to get heavier, they need to get bigger for their position. But we don't want to sacrifice speed and explosiveness for that. So I usually give them an example. Say, listen, let's say, for example, you want to gain 10 kilograms. So you want to gain 10 kilograms. You're weighing 100 kilograms. You're an eighth man, and you're 1.9 meters tall. You weigh 100 kilograms. You want to weigh 110 because you need to do the carries. You're the guy who's going to go over the advantage line. If you gain 10 kilograms, you also have to add about 20 kilograms on squat, as an example, and that's one exercise. Whatever exercise you choose, you need to
Yeah,
gain 20 kilograms. So if you gain 10 kilograms, your strength needs to get better by 20, 25 kilograms, just to kind of equalize almost in terms of relative strength. So, so if you don't have to, I've seen a lot of athletes that do not weigh what they're supposed to weigh and make serious gains on the advantage line when they're running, and really strong, really fast. Um, so, so you have to kind of really make sure that if you want to gain weight and want to gain mass as an athlete, that it's going to be worthwhile the performance that you're going to be getting out of it, and make sure that you're doing it in the correct kind of way. So I think that's a
Yeah.
key thing with regards to the relative and maximal strength. So remember, if you gain body weight, then you have to get quite a bit stronger for the amount of weight that you're gaining on mass. So just to keep your performance.
So to maybe not you can allude. I think you're the guy to ask. In comparison, how long do you think, in comparison, will it take for someone to gain weight to get faster compared to someone losing weight to get faster?
Losing weight's almost happens if everything is done correctly. If everything's done correctly, losing weight will get you much faster, much sooner. If everything's done correctly, I've had athletes that went to professional franchises. They come back 10 kilograms lighter, and they should have lost weight, which is great. But they come back 10 kilograms lighter, but then their power clean is also down 10 kilograms. And worse than that even is their 10-meter sprint was slower. So then it's useless. So
Yeah.
if everything is done
You missed the
correctly,
point.
you still focus on power strength. You can actually, I've got a few people that I'm working with that body weight's down 5-6 kilograms, jumps are up by 0.3 meters per second, vertical jump in terms of velocity. Looking at squats up 10-15%, all those kind of things. I mean, and that immediately makes them faster. So they've lost weight and they've become stronger. That's a double whammy that you get in there. But if you drop weight and you maintain your strength, speed, maintain your capacity, speed, power, your power capacity and your strength capacity, and you drop 5-10 kilograms, you'll be faster immediately. It's the same as if you run a 10-meter sprint with a 5-kilogram bodysuit on, you will be slower immediately. So same thing if you take it off, you'll be faster immediately. So that's the fastest way to kind of describe what will happen with weight loss.
Yeah.
So and especially if you're losing the right kind of weight, which you don't want to lose lean mass. So
Yeah. And I think part of that needs to also be said, Naat, is in specificity of what you do in the gym now. It does not mean if you pick up weight in your bodybuilder that you're going to run a 10-meter faster or a faster 40 or do a quicker change of direction. The specificity of what you do in the gym is important. But I think for this podcast, I think everyone understands what we're talking about.
For sure, yeah.
And then just to get into it, so Run Great, the evaluation testing that we do of our athletes, very simple. Each acronym of the Run Great means something. It has a description of something as the athlete moves in each element. If I go back to these elements, again, from starting to strength or to fast speed, each element in the start, they need to run great. In the acceleration, they need to run great. In top end speed, they need to run great. In deceleration, they need to run great. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
So the acronym is used in every facet of their speed development to see if, hey, a measurement tool of how efficiently are they doing these concepts in those tools. Does it make sense now?
100%, yes.
Okay, cool. If it doesn't, so what I mean by that is it looks like this. So when I look at subjects and evaluation of running mechanics, so firstly, that run, you see that run, the first bit, is firstly, are they relaxed? You've seen many athletes, they run, they tense, I always laugh at the props in rugby and said, your facial expressions was quicker than your run. So you need to be able to relax. And that has to do with a lot of breathing, facial expression, and body tension. And again, if you are tense, if you are, yes.
Simple example of that is if you look at 100-meter
So
race. Simple example, 100-meter race. If you look at a 100-meter race, look at the guys that's not first. A lot of them are usually battling, they're tensing up, they're not relaxing. So it's usually that because they're trying too hard almost.
Yeah.
So
100%. 100%. And again, you can imagine it's like trying to take a punch when you're tense, or giving a punch when you're tense, or throwing a ball when you're tense. And exactly the same happens in sport and athletics, and even in team sport. And running is actually something that comes automatic. You're not tense. There's no stress on man. Then the is for unnatural movements. So your head, your arms, your legs, and your feet. If there's any unnatural movement or moving pattern, that will go to some pictures later that I can show you of how it looks when it looks good and when it doesn't look good. But fundamentally, they want to be natural movements throughout. going back to our first slide again, if there are unnatural movements, you need to start at the basics first. And then, firstly, what is natural? Are they naturally moving effectively? Is it something that comes efficiently and comfortably? Is the carryover of what they do from one to the other comfortable? Is it natural movement? And again, you'll see it when you see a good athlete move, it almost looks natural. I don't know another way to explain it. It just comes efficiently. They just do it well. And you could see it, and some athletes you could see it's hard. This is tense. They are really struggling. 90% of it's balance, coordination, stability, mobility, we spoke about. Then the G for the great is ground reaction force and ground reaction time. So fundamentally um, is is basic, that braking force. So that is to do with can they overcome inertia? That is to do with foot contact time. It has to do with efficiency. It has to do with impulse. It has to do with momentum. There's a lot of physiological stuff that needs to happen for you to have good reaction force on the floor. I don't even want to allude on that a little bit now because I know there's a lot more in that than just said ground reaction time.
Yeah, so obviously the ground reaction, if you're looking at what we're talking about, your reactive strength, that's where reactive strength comes in. Ground reaction force is
Yeah,
it's a massive thing. I mean, it's
100%. And stiffness there.
the amount of force that happens in sprinting and in running, surprisingly high. We've mentioned this a few times before, and that's really a key thing in running. So you also know that if you're looking at elite runners or elite sprinters, you can actually hear the difference if it's an elite runner running and a non-elite runner running. You can hear the difference, especially if they're running on a track. So I've got some experience in track and field and sprinting, and even elite athletes with their coaches. A lot of the coaches can actually, if they're not seeing it, they can hear the difference if an athlete is kind of fatigued and not getting proper ground reaction forces and timing on that one. So really important, I think. And also
100%.
what they found is um, the athlete that can almost give the greatest ground reaction force is usually the one that is the fastest, everything else being equal.
100%. And throughout the research, you can go, there's ample, if you want to go and take this run guide and take each element, that component to be stiff and to be rigid, or to a typical example, your depth jumps or your reactive jumps. Um, they, um, they are crucial in what we want to do. And again, it's something that you can train in the gym.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so, so that's ground reaction force. The next one is obviously is recovery leg. So while you're running, and I'll show you some pictures later, but while you're recovering, you need to be able to react to the fall. You need to be able to move effectively, and you need to um, have that recovery leg in the right position for the next step, if it makes sense. And I'll show you a little bit more pictures. But that is to do remember when we spoke last week, we spoke about that formula for speed, saying it has to do with stride length, stride frequency, and genetics. That is where this stride frequency comes in. It is actually the ability for the body to be in a good position for the next movement. And that's where, when people, if you look at the videos and guys do rhythmic drills like A skips and B skips and B skips and B and whatever the skips are, it actually, there is a bit of a stiffness and a bit of plyometric to it, but fundamentally, it is to build the capacity to recover well for the next load. And then elevation. So if you look at an athlete, and I'll show a little bit later, that ground reaction force and the ability to be stiff and rigid actually depends and varies on where they are in the phase of running. And if there's a lot of dissociation or loss of strength or stiffness, you can actually see on the videos how the athletes lose that capacity over time. And again, we'll allude to it later, but one of the elements we're looking at is fatigue, and especially muscular fatigue and then later central fatigue. You can see the drop in the athlete's posture as they move along. So that's something you can look at, and obviously it's something you need to look at while you train it. Then arm action. So we speak about arms. You'll hear a lot of coaches speak about hands. The fundamental is actually your shoulder. But we speak about arms because that's what most people look at. But there is a specific way of how your arm's supposed to move to be more efficient, to stabilize the trunk in movement. Okay, we'll maybe get to that later. And then lastly, but probably in the beginning, the most important is trunk. The ability for the athlete, in depending on where they are in their formula or their phase of the race, plays a huge role in effectively carrying momentum. Obviously, it's a vector quality, and there has to be velocity with angle or direction. So the trunk plays a major role in that. So maybe not, I don't really, maybe you can remember now what this run great formula is about. Maybe your opinion on this.
No, I mean, this basically covers everything. I mean, it's a nice way to kind of remember all the different components that we had to learn uh, in studying at university and that. So they gave us definitely not such an easy acronym and a way to run that. So I mean, this basically, like I said,
Formula
covers
to
all the
use now.
components. Yeah, yeah, much easier to use, and it's actually very, very good. I must
It's
say
all the
that.
components, and it's an
Yeah,
easy thing. So on each
yeah,
element, and let me just go through those elements. So when you look at run great, when I look at this is now a 40-meter race, in the starting component, I want to be able to have a run great, and I can measure all those elements on the start.
yeah.
I can do the same while the athlete accelerates. I should be able the same, that transition from acceleration to top end speed, and then measure top end speed. And then when I decelerate, we can look at exactly the same formula. And we want our athletes from the start to the stop to have a run great pattern
Yeah.
in the mold. I don't know if
Oh,
that
that's
makes
brilliant.
sense.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. No, that's brilliant. I mean, that's a brilliant tool to have, and if you have this knowledge at your fingertips, it makes it much easier just to give a very good analysis at every phase of
100%.
the
And
run.
that's
Yeah.
why you could do it with time, and a video just helps with that, man.
No, for sure. Yeah, video will make a massive difference. I mean, even a lot of coaches, if you don't have electronic timing available, if you just take a video with your cell phone camera, that'll really make a big difference. You'll really be able to see a lot of the things. So to give athletes the feedback. So yeah, that'll be brilliant. All right. Still there, Peter? See the microphone. It looks like your mic is muted there. I don't know what happened.
There we
There you
go.
go.
Sorry, guys.
Right.
It's back on again.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's a nice formula. This thing I just want to show you is coming back to our assessment and our profiling we did earlier. Again, on that same formula. Now we've got the run great. This stuff I show you at the bottom is a very simple method. Remember, we spoke right in the beginning of how we can test it, and then we can amalgamate these two together. So when we look at unilateral or horizontal movements, like the broad jump, is a very good indication for us of the ability of the athlete to generate or overcome inertia, the start, or the first few
Yeah, yeah.
steps. And
Because you're
as
getting
we
that
move
vector
along,
quality in
the
you.
vertical jump becomes 100%. Again, you need arms, you need trunk, and you need legs in that movement. And you can look then and say, okay, cool, how good is the horizontal displacement? And then how good is the vertical displacement? And this will give you a good profile of the ability. There's a lot of correlation between your broad jump, horizontal jump, and your starting or acceleration component. And there's a very high correlation between your vertical jump and your top end speed mechanics. So again, these two with your run grade formula and your testing protocols should give you a good indication of how your athlete's baseline is and where the elements should be and where I can start to correct it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a brilliant and easy thing to apply. Really easy to apply, easy to test, easy
Yeah.
to create the profile of an athlete, and to know exactly where your kind of like your leverage point is for your athlete.
Yeah, and it's simple enough. I hope you guys think it's simple enough that anyone can grasp it, anyone can copy it, anyone can use it. I think the bottom line is, and I want to show you, it boils down fundamentally to your coaching philosophy. Um, This is something I use. I find a great value in it. Um, and fundamentally for me, it is everything I need to do is, especially when I'm testing profiling, it needs to be trained fast to be fast. I can't do profiling and stuff with guys with lab-blasted methods, or they don't give 100% of their capability. It needs to be done at high-end speed so that we can see and break down where the limiting factors are. And then again, when we train, we always want to win the race.
Yeah.
It should be intent. The idea is that everything I do when I do testing and baseline testing should be at maximal effort. Otherwise, I can't simulate what we do in a game scenario.
Yeah. That's really, so maybe a thought that I want to ask you is so what I have found is so the players that's been with me for a while, they understand how I work and what my ideas and concepts are. So this falls in with the train fast to be fast idea. A lot of athletes I'm talking specifically now with team sports and in rugby. If we are doing a speed session on the field or a sprint session on field where it has to be at maximal effort or fast effort, a lot of them don't put in the effort to go
Yeah,
at true maximum. So yes, they're running fast, but it's
yeah,
not maximal effort. So let's say, for example, we do
yeah,
we do just a 10 meter off the mark acceleration, very basic. We're not even working at deceleration. We just want to run through the line. So what I have found is a lot of them kind of start to
yeah,
decelerate before the 10 meters. That's one problem a lot of them have. So we want to do a 10 meter, and I've got a 10 meter mark.
yeah,
So a lot of them,
yeah,
like
yeah,
at the 9 meter mark, they're already starting to relax and not moving through. And a lot of the other problems that we'll find is a lot of them
yeah.
just don't go at maximal effort. Um, your what will be
Yeah.
what's the difference between doing it like that and doing it at maximal effort? I mean, if in terms of what you'll get, in your opinion. So if someone is training like I've explained now, you have a
I
group of
think just
athletes.
the
You have a group of athletes that. So generally, let's say we have a very inexperienced coach or a coach who's a rugby coach who's not into conditioning. He wants to do some speed work with athletes, puts them on the line, a 10-meter sprint, and they do what I've explained now. They stop either a meter before or they do not even go at full
yeah,
speed. Right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Just to
versus
say,
versus doing it
I think,
properly. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's benefits and negatives in both. I think that if you take that coach and he's inexperienced and he doesn't do it flat out, at least they've got something. So let's start there. I think the start, at least you've got something they can back onto, and you've got something you could sit down with your player and give for some feedback about the effort, and at least there's a conversation behind what you do. The problem is just if it's not done at right intensities and pace, the unfortunate breakdown in your kinetic chain or in your energy system, on your stiffness, or on your weight transfer, or on your trunk, on your arms, on your legs, it won't look the same as when you need it to complete it or to compare or to even improve it. And that's my biggest issue currently, or when I work with athletes. If it's not done at maximal pace, it's actually not a true value of what you'll do when you're competing. So the information is actually miscruited. So it doesn't give me a feedback and a proper feedback of what I'm intentionally trying to improve. And that's again, like I said, I think there's two parts of it. I think the one is at least I've got something we can give you feedback and at least say, listen, this wasn't great. But if it's done at the right pace, speed, intensity, at least then we've got true data of where our baseline is and how we can improve.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I think a lot of
And then I think for the last one for today, Naat,
yes.
is I just want to give you guys a very simple. So this is a easy, and again, I know it's very simple. We can get really complex about this, but fundamentally, we've got a great run, great formula. We can take each element of it, but the feedback, how I coach it, is very simply these three elements. So when your athlete in each phases, I'm again mentioning these phases, from start to deceleration, in those phases, when you're on the field and I want to coach, it doesn't be help to give all the run grade details and be specific and break it down and your contact and your blah blah. It doesn't. They don't, athlete don't break it down. is this technical model I found is just very simple.
Yeah.
I want to always correct something. I want to look at how well is their posture. I want to look at what is the legs doing and what are the arms doing. And I want some feedback from the athlete of what are you doing and how does it feel. And secondly, I want to give them my instruction of how this is and how we think can improve it. And again, there's lots of science and there's lots of stuff. I think Winkelmann is one of the best kind in the
Yeah.
world
It was
about
very good.
cueing. So how do I
Yeah.
cue? And that's something we can maybe do at a stage
Definitely.
is how I correct them. And that cueing is vital to the success of improving that formula or that phase of the athlete.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Um,
That's actually
so this is
a
an
good
easy,
topic.
simple technical model. But yeah, and we can maybe allude to it. I've got a thing here, Winkelmann, about how to, and this is not Bosch. Here's one cues from Winkelmann.
Don't give away too much.
To
We can
just
do a great presentation on this.
Yeah, so we will
Yeah.
come back to that. But I think important to say it's not always just what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's also important. If you do have a technical model like this and you can stand on the field, there's basic three areas you want to correct is what they do in the posture, what they do with their legs, and what they do with their arms. And it gives you a great tool, even if you just write these down to say in a start, how is their trunk or their posture, how's their legs, or how's their arms, and you break down each one of them down. At least you've got a technical model you can actually correct for the athlete and something you can work
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean, this is, and once again, this falls under the principles. Um, and there's various methods that a lot of guys uh, do this kind of things and model their things in the way they go about it. But at least you have a framework that you're working with in terms of correcting the technicality of the run, of your athletes running. So yeah, that's good.
100%. Yeah. So just to quickly show you guys, here's some pictures. Obviously, someone in the start, and we can maybe do that later. Here's another one of a start and how it's supposed to do. Look at the arms, look at the legs, look at the trunk. Again, here's another picture of a good acceleration, a good start. Um, Here's one where we're starting in acceleration. Obviously, I've just shown you on a wall drill how you can correct it and the points that free leg that we spoke about, what the arms are doing, what the trunk is doing, what the back leg is doing. Here's another picture of that in acceleration and big arm movements. Here's another one while the guy is accelerating. It's almost to the point of center of mass, so it's almost in top end speed. And then this could also be applied in deceleration. It could always, again, if you look at what's feet position, what is the trunk, what is the shoulders, what is the legs, what is the arms doing. So it doesn't always need to apply to just a straight line. The same run gait formula could be used in lateral and change of direction components as well.
Okay, oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
And that's my story for today, Naat.
Oh, that's brilliant. Great stuff. I think a lot of value from today.
Anything you want to allude on? Anything you want to discuss?
No.
Chat. Huh?
I think the big thing that I want to add in, or just basically reiterate, is that if you are doing a session and the session is not a technical session on technical aspects of running, you are trying to get the athletes faster and they're doing speed work, acceleration work, deceleration work, those kind of things. It has to be at high intent, high speed, high velocity. That's the key thing. And especially if you're working in team sports, you need to know what it looks like if your athletes are not going at maximal speed, maximal effort, because you need to be able to stop them, give them the feedback, and improve on that. And I'm a stickler for that. A lot of the players and athletes that just worked with me knows that I'm a stickler for those kind of things. It has to be done at the right speed, right intensity, because I will explain to the athlete, listen, if you do it that way, just go and watch TV, at least you'll recover. It's kind of the thing. If you're going to do it at that intent and that effort, just watch TV. Go and watch TV. At least you're resting and recovering. Or go take a cold shower if you really want to punish yourself. But I mean, it's really important. You just don't get the same benefit. So you get some benefit, but you just don't get the same benefit. And I like getting the optimal benefit. So that's a key factor. And then if you are well experienced coach, you use the run great model and you use the technical corrections, that you can make a great difference in athletes, I think. So brilliant stuff. Yeah, I think I really liked what you did today. Yeah, awesome stuff.
Okay. Awesome, Naat. Thanks, man. That was great.
All right, great stuff. Thank you very much, Peter, and we'll have a chat again soon. All
Yeah,
right,
thank you, buddy. Have a blessed day.
you too. Bye bye.